Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, Real_G Warner, on Instagram, Patreon, and Twitter, of course. This is a Champions League episode. Going to go through Tuesday and Wednesday soccer card this week. It is Monday night, late night with the Real_G Warner, as always, or trying not to be late night all the time, but that's what we got. Just got off a flight, so let's go figure out some winners for Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll have an ultimate best bet end of show, taking the best, my favorite bet from Tuesday, favorite bet in Wednesday, putting them, squaring them off one by one and seeing who the winner will be. And hopefully we'll all profit for us. If you're not following me on Twitter, do that. If you're not on Patreon yet, check it out. Patreon.com. This is Real_G Warner, the best spot to get my over 80% college basketball picks so far this season. Of course, my soccer stuff as well. Really everything I do at pro football, college football, that sort of stuff. And of course, if you're supporting me on Patreon, thank you so much for all the support there. Still doing the college basketball podcast with my good friend AJ Hoffman. So stay tuned for those coming out Thursday nights and Sunday nights. And then if you're not a member yet of BetOnline or sportsbetting.ag, got promo codes or in the description of the podcast. Well, let's get into it. We'll start with Tuesday matchups. We got one in the early window, so we might as well just jump in there while we have it. Or I guess there's one early window, but there's two matches, so I should probably say that correctly, assuming that I can load this screen. All lines are quoted courtesy of BetOnline, longtime sponsor of the Betting the Pitch podcast network. Thank you to them. And so if you're not a member yet there, go check them out. Get a 50% bonus for signing up with promo code GW50. All those instructions are available in the podcast description, wherever you're listening. And thank you for doing that. So we'll start with Lazio hosting Celtic. And I guess it probably makes sense now, since we're at match day 5 of the Champions League, that I can pull up some standings. I think at this point, it's not a huge deciding factor, I don't think, but I do think it's probably reasonable to talk about it, because some of these teams might have to go a little bit outside their comfort zone. Not everything has been decided clearly already. There's gonna be stuff that comes down to the end, as it always does. But I do think that there's some value potentially in looking at who needs what, and who's able to sit back and play for a draw, and really who is not going to be able to do that based on kind of where they sit. So let's start with Lazio hosting Celtic. Currently, this is gonna be hard to do because I'm gonna have to go through a million spreadsheets, but whatever, we'll do it that way. We'll start, I guess, with where everyone sits in the table. In Group E in Champions League, we have Celtic at the bottom with 1 point, Lazio with 7 points in second place, coming off a big win over Feyenoord, if I remember correctly. 1 point behind Atletico Madrid, and then Feyenoord are sitting third with 6 points. We're, I think, in a much better position. We're leading the group and now find themselves third after not a great match day 4. I've not been impressed by Lazio this year at all. Got a late penalty in their match. I think it was early Saturday morning, if I remember correctly, in Serie A this week against Salernitano, who I don't think had won yet under the new manager. I'm not sure they'd won in a recent memory. I think they had one win over a really bad Empoli side, if I remember correctly. So Lazio clearly not in their best run of form. I wouldn't be shocked if Maurizio Sarri got sacked. I might as well look that up while we're here. Let's see, Lazio manager. It still is Maurizio Sarri, but they're probably, all the fans in that portion, the Lazio region of Rome, are probably all sorry that Maurizio is still the manager. But anyway, so Lazio 1-goal favorite, a little bit more juice on Celtic on the road. Over unders 2 3/4, and it's juiced a little bit to under. I have been tracking where this line opened, or at least when I first loaded it, and where it is now. Looks like Celtic have been getting bet a fair amount because they were getting odds +1 before these matches occurred. Probably some reaction to Lazio losing this weekend. And the total has taken some bets to the under as well, which is, I think, my favorite and my biggest interest in this one. My immediate concerns are, can Celtic defend? And they haven't really shown a lot of defensive capabilities in their European history. I don't follow the Scottish Premier League, but they've been awful in Europe. Every time I've watched them, they're at the bottom of the table here on 1 point. I think, since third place does fall into Europa League playoff spot for their knockout rounds, yes, they'd love to get to 6 points. Feyenoord are sitting there, but that looks like a pretty tough thing to do. It does make me wonder if Celtic are going to play their best players. And I think, unfortunately, they probably see a win as a must, a necessary, in order to get them any sort of chance at potentially advancing. Draw actually probably eliminates them. So that does concern me with playing under a little bit. It's not looking like we'll get that important push on 3, which would be really nice as well. So I'm not really sure what to do with this one besides leaning to under, just because I don't think Lazio have been able to score goals at all this season. 3 goals would only lose half a bet at this point. I hate to think of that in the negative fashion before putting a bet in. But it feels like a decent risk for Lazio to take a 1-0 lead, maybe a 2-0 lead, and then really sit and try to kill the match, because Celtic probably aren't likely to threaten too much. Biggest question, I think, is the Celtic defense, and I'm not sure those will be answered until after this match is finished. Next, we'll move to Shakhtar Donetsk hosting Antwerp. I believe the match is being played in Germany, in Hamburg, if I'm not mistaken, northern Germany. And from what I remember, Antwerp had a lead in this first meeting, and Shakhtar Donetsk came back from maybe 2 deficits to win. Currently in the group standings, I think Barcelona's group. Barcelona are top on 9 points, Porto second on 9 points, Shakhtar Donetsk on 6 points, and Antwerp have 0 points, sitting last, 4 losses, have lost every match. And Antwerp were a half a goal underdog here with all the juice. Interesting to see that. Really a team that's done nothing, not even earned a point yet. Seems like they're getting bet too, because this number has climbed from an initial half of a goal -118, now -126 at BetOnline. So not a significant change, but certainly money is flowing on Antwerp as opposed to Shakhtar Donetsk, which is a little bit surprising, especially because Shakhtar is coming off a giant upset of Barcelona. Over under at 2.5. We have juiced pretty heavily to over. Looks like the under's been getting bet a little bit, but it's been plus money on under for a while. I think Shakhtar Donetsk, they're going to try to win this matchup. Shocker, not shocker at all. Certainly not playing in Ukraine, unfortunately for them. I don't say that laughing. I guess was clearing my throat for all the Slava Ukrainians out there. But Antwerp have not really been competitive. They were one of the big underdogs to even get into this competition, got through the playoffs. Which I believe Shakhtar Donetsk might have as well, but also may not have, because I think the Ukrainian champion gets it automatically, and we don't have a Dynamo Kiev in here, so it probably was an automatic bid. But I think just as an underdog player, really, I guess if this dropped to a quarter, I'd be very interested in Shakhtar Donetsk, but I'm still not going to. A leopard doesn't change his spots, neither does a cheetah. I'm very unlikely to play anyone where a draw is a loss. Shakhtar Donetsk with a draw are still in striking range, especially because Barcelona and Porto play each other. But everyone draws in this, then Shakhtar Donetsk are going to have to win their last matchup against Porto. So there's probably some draw isn't good enough for us type of Shakhtar Donetsk feeling here. They're pretty much already clinched. Well, with a draw, they do clinch that 3rd place position, dropping into Europa League, which could financially be a boon to them. Certainly want to keep going in the Champions League. I'm sure they'll be out for blood, trying to win as much as possible. And the Shakhtar Donetsk strategy is really to go out, try to score as many goals as possible. So maybe like the counterattack, but usually that's against bigger sides. Probably not going to happen against this Royal Antwerp FC from Belgium. And ultimately, I don't think there's a lot that I want to do there, because I don't really like what I've seen from Antwerp, and feel like betting under in this matchup is backing their defense, which I'm not sure I want to do. Next, we'll move to PSG hosting Newcastle, a much bigger matchup than that last one. This is the group of death, and it's an interesting setup right now, where it's the group of death and it's the closest group. What a surprise. Dortmund are leading on 7 goals. 7 points. Only 3 goals scored in 4 matches, which says something about Dortmund this year. PSG on 6 points. They've scored 7 goals, but have less points, a lot less point, or 1 less point with 4 more goals. Surprising. Milan next on 5 and Newcastle on 4. PSG are a 1-goal favorite to Newcastle, with almost all the juice on Newcastle on the road. Over under is 3, and it is juiced very heavily to under. There's been a fair amount of movement in this line, at least from when I've been tracking it. Newcastle have climbed from a 3/4 goal underdog and a 2 3/4 goal under to now a full 1 and a full 3. I think you'd probably blame that on injuries. I don't have this probably going back to before the international break, because I don't think those lines were out then. But Newcastle were also the closing underdog at home to Chelsea this week, a lot due to injuries, but Alexander Isak starting was huge for Newcastle, scored a goal, and ultimately they need some sort of striker, either Callum Wilson or Isak, to be playing for Newcastle to be firing on all cylinders. They're trying to play two competitions, which I think everyone, at least one of my big interests coming into this year, was Newcastle really struggling to balance two competitions because they haven't done it in, I don't know, 20 years, it feels like, at least the Champions League, it seems. But they have done fairly well at home this year, have been really, really strugglers on the road. I imagine against the PSG side, who are essentially playing a 4-2-4. They are playing as many forwards as possible. They did lose one of their important midfielders to injury, but they have a fair amount of backups. Fabian Ruiz, I think, played on Friday against Monaco. They scored a bunch of goals. I'm not really sure if that was a PSG thing or if that was more of Monaco really struggling defensively. But Newcastle are going to go in and try to defend like crazy. Jamal Lascelles playing as much as he is, never good, even though he's a club captain. Newcastle have been battling a ton of injuries, of course, playing in the most demanding Premier League in England, and then also playing in the most demanding continental competition and Champions League has not gone great for them. Makes me less interested in that +1, though I do love getting a goal of insurance on a good defense. I think my bigger interest here, and it kind of is a derivative of backing Newcastle against the spread, is that under 3 goals, because I don't think Newcastle have a very high likelihood of scoring here. In terms of the number, I made it. It's a lot bigger than I had it, but I might be underselling or not being fully aware of how many injuries Newcastle are potentially dealing with. If there are more injuries after their match against Chelsea this weekend, that will all be news to me, I guess. But I think just from where I am in this one, I have to put Newcastle +1 on my list because that full goal of insurance is great on a great defense. But I am keeping in mind their struggles away from home. I think I like under 3 best in that one. Next, we move to Feyenoord and at Atletico Madrid, which we've already talked about the group standing, but why not? We'll remind you again. Atleti on 8 points, lead the group. Lazio on 7, Feyenoord on 6, and Celtic on only 1. Currently Feyenoord a pick'em right now. So that's Atleti with a little bit more juice. Over under is 2 3/4, juice to under. We've had some movement here as well. I think Feyenoord, they opened up, I guess, as more of the underdog with less of the juice at pick'em, though clearly at pick'em with an Atletico Madrid and La Liga side, they are considered worse on a neutral field, considering not being a favorite at home. With that said, Feyenoord are going to have a huge crowd behind them. That's one thing I've been really impressed with the Eredivisie sides, which I think is a big reason they've climbed to number 5 in the global rankings ahead of Ligue 1 and France, is because they were so good in Europe last year, and a lot of it's because their crowds deliver. You can say that about a lot of crowds, but I think that the Dutch ones are some of the best out there. That's probably where I need to go on my next soccer trip for the league season, if I can make that happen. So, Francis, if you're listening, let's figure that one out. But we'll have Feyenoord at Pick'em right now. I guess that's the side I want here, but they are. And they played Atletico Madrid really competitively. I thought were on the receiving end of a really bad offside call that overturned a goal that was disallowed, and then really kind of Feyenoord melted from there. I think they had 2 leads against Atleti, but lost 3-2 on the road at this Wanda Metropolitano. And that tells me that Feyenoord are going to compete here. And considering they were just leading the group, they probably see this as a win is a huge help for them. And honestly, I guess there are some concerns. I mean, I think they probably would not go all out and risk their goalkeeper up for a corner kick or something like that in a tie match late in the matchup. I don't think that's likely to happen because there's still one match day remaining. But a draw, and while Lazio win, would keep Feyenoord 2 points behind Atletico Madrid and ultimately would put them 3 points behind Lazio. So a draw would not be good if Lazio are going to win. They'll know that result ahead of time, which might impact kind of how they're playing. Though I still feel like if they get a draw, they're in good shape I think they face Celtic in their last matchup. So figure they're on 3 points from that next one. So they'll be at 9. So if they can keep Lazio, I mean, a win over Atleti is probably a huge, I mean, it would be a huge step for Feyenoord to move forward, but I guess there's so much still to play for with 2 full matches left that it's hard to say that. It would be a lot easier Tuesday afternoon after that Celtic Lazio match finishes. Celtic get a result or somehow steal a victory on the road. That'd be huge for Feyenoord. But we'll see. And maybe they probably can't game plan differently because that result will finish 15 minutes or so before the next match. But it might certainly change some substitution patterns or give some different strategies in game or something like that if there's some things to do. But granted, we're putting these bets in before the matches kick off, so that's also hard to speculate on. In terms of the over under here, 2 3/4, it's barely moved. The pick'em, as I said, has moved from Feyenoord having less juice to having slightly more. I think my biggest interest here is Feyenoord at a pick'em. I don't know that they're a strong enough lean for me right now. I think the under 2 3/4 does look a little bit more interesting for Atletico Madrid when they go on the road. They're less likely to try to win matches 3-0. I think they're more likely to take a 1-0 lead. They even do this at home sometimes, but ultimately take a 1-0 lead and sit on it and try to run the clock out. That would help under. I'm not sure that they take that lead. I think Feyenoord is the side I want here, but I don't know that I want them at pick'em laying more juice at the moment. Juice, I guess, doesn't matter so much at pick'em. If you draw, then you get your money back. But I think I'll be looking to see Atleti get bet and hope that the smaller nation, less well-known club will deliver, because I feel like in these competitions, in Champions League especially, you always got to watch out for the lower league that is favored at home to a giant, and that's exactly what we have here. So nothing to add just yet to my ultimate best bet list for Tuesday, but we'll move next to Manchester City hosting Leipzig. Man City coming off that early setup with Liverpool, big matchup that they took a 1-0 lead in, gave up an equalizer, and there didn't seem to be a ton of going for or risking to win that matchup. I guess early in the season, you don't do that when there's a long way to go with the Premier League. But anyway, in terms of pricing, we opened at Red Bull Leipzig, a 1.5 goal underdog on the road. That's about the same price that it started. Jesus has gotten a little bit more, I guess, bets on the Leipzig side to even it out at -110. Split juice both ways. Over under is 3.25 and is juiced very heavily to under. Might fall to 3 before this kicks off. Now, the first time these teams matched up, Leipzig, I thought you could argue outplayed Man City and then gave up eventually fell behind and gave up a late kind of empty net style goal with, I think it was a 2-on-1 led by Doku, who scored the goal at the end in stoppage time or something like that to really stick the knife in. But this is a different scenario now. Leipzig, who have shown pretty significant road splits in a bad direction, really great at home, really bad on the road, fell behind early to Wolfsburg this weekend, lost of the same Wolfsburg side, have been really struggling over the last couple of months in Germany, lost them in the Pokal on the road. Leipzig look like a team that are really struggling, but they're through to the next round, which also makes me wonder if they shift some focus to the Bundesliga. They're currently 3 points behind because Man City have won all their matches. Leipzig have won all theirs besides that loss to Man City at home. I think there's a good chance that Leipzig are not going to play their best side, or at least be wary, cognizant of rotation, which is not good on the road at the Etihad against the best club in world football. Leipzig are extremely talented and are really great at beating up teams that they're better than. And I think they're pretty good at holding their own and staying competitive with teams that they're on similar levels too. But there does seem to be a big gap between Manchester City and Leipzig, despite the fact that Leipzig, I think, did beat Manchester City at home last year in the competition. Regardless, no real threat from the other clubs in Crvena Zvezda, Red Star Belgrade, and Young Boys. So I think the Leipzig lineup will say a lot about what they're kind of going for in this matchup, but also you got to be wary that there could be substitutions, early people taking off, young players potentially getting subbed on, and Man City would look very dangerous in that scenario. So my initial lean, I guess, to this one is the Leipzig side, though I feel like that kind of goes along with the total. They're both bigger than what I made it, so I think that forces me, especially because I made the total. It's on the wrong side of 3 or the right side of 3 for under here for me. So I guess I got to put that on my list as potentials, but that is really dependent on what I'm expecting and trying to handicap the Leipzig mentality going to this one. And that's going to be certainly hard to do. Next, we move to Milan hosting Borussia Dortmund. Incredible matches this week. Dortmund falling behind 2-0 to Mönchengladbach, coming back and winning 3-2. And holding on for dear life, but that doesn't even go into to describe what Milan did. Got a penalty, if I remember correctly. And then literally put their entire defense, entire team, you could say, in the 18-yard box to try to keep really average Fiorentina out. Mike Bagnan making a save with his face in the last minute or so of stoppage time in the second half. Milan have been very unimpressive, yet they're a quarter goal favorite here to Dortmund, and we're a similar price quarter goal favorite, or excuse me, quarter goal underdog on the road at Dortmund, and but they had a lot more juice. They had all of it, actually. Dortmund on the other side, they are better than even money at BetOnline right now. So Milan quarter goal favorite with all the juice. I'll tell you where that's gone so far. It's I guess, well, it's been bet a fair amount, actually. Now that I'm looking at it, it seems like more. I guess there's more money coming in at Dortmund as they opened up a half a goal underdog, been bet down to a quarter, and seemingly keep getting bet, which I think probably suggests the Milan lineup is going to be still as injured as it was this weekend. Christian Pulisic leading the line for Milan is never a good situation. Unfortunately, the American Captain America, has just not really taken off in the big leagues in Europe, I don't think. Total, we got 2.5. Looks like that has come. I guess the over's been getting bet a little bit, and that's probably my biggest interest, is to be against that over lean. As I kind of already was surprised about, Boltzmann in 4 matches have scored 3 goals, 2 wins in that, and 7 points total. Loss at PSG. I think they had a 0-0 with Milan, and I think 2 1-0 victories with Newcastle, I want to say. Maybe that's how they've gotten there. Defensive record is awesome. 2 goals allowed in 4 matches. Certainly points to under, as is 3 goals scored in 4 matches. And this is a pretty dire situation. So Dortmund on 7 points, PSG 6, Milan 5, Newcastle 4. All possibilities. All 4 could go through. All 4 could win the group. All 4 could finish bottom, it seems. Though Dortmund are probably in the best situation for that not to happen. I think when I look at this matchup, I think it's 2 teams that are not playing well, are nowhere near expectations, which are extremely high, and impossible probably to deliver upon. But I think my biggest interest here is the under 2.5. I don't know that I like Dortmund as much, though. I did play Fiorentina this weekend and felt like that could have been a very easy win if not for Mike Bagnan's face late, plus a ton of penalty decisions that could have gone Fiorentina's way to level that up, and somehow didn't get one, even though there were studs placed on the crotch region of a Fiorentina player during a Milan clearance. But who am I to argue these things? Because the refs just kind of make up their own rules every week, it seems, or every day, every match even. But I'll put Dortmund on my list at getting a quarter of a goal. I don't love that I've already lost that half of a goal. It's down to a quarter, though I do like getting odds on it, and sometimes selling the juice. I wouldn't be shocked if Dortmund, after winning at Newcastle with a big surprise there, if they could go do this at Milan, and especially facing a Milan side that have been playing so poorly so far. A lot due to injury, but that's what happens when you play Champions League and don't have as deep of a squad as you wanted because your sporting director left in a tizzy this summer. I guess I like the side too. Barcelona then hosts Porto. We'll go into that group H, and like I had already mentioned, Barcelona and Porto both on 9 points. Played a really competitive match the first time. I thought Porto got screwed. Had a penalty taken back because of a handball, which is very questionable. Hello, Barcelona getting calls, but usually that's just a La Liga thing, I think, more so than Champions League, which is probably why I like betting Champions League, because there's not as much deference to the big clubs, because I guess they do keep the lights on in those leagues. But anyway, I guess we can leave the conspiracy theories to the side. Barcelona currently, they're a 1-goal favorite. Juice is split both ways. Over under is 2 3/4, and it is juiced to the under. In terms of movement so far, we've let's see. So it opened at 1 1/4, very juiced on Porto. So that number has come down a little bit. Unfortunately, a single goal loss on the road, you will only push instead of winning half your bet here. But that push is still important to me. I think Porto can go in and get a result. Over under is 2 3/4. That has gotten bet to the under a fair amount. You might say that as a response to Barcelona's really poor showing against Rayo Vallecano this weekend, or you could say it's really how they've played this whole season. Even last season when they won La Liga going away, I think that was more of a Real Madrid problem than Barcelona being any good. They're still a team that I want to play under as much as possible. Not seeing Ter Stegen for the last match after I think he played for Germany in the international window. We'll see if his back has healed miraculously in a few days. I think that's important because the Barcelona backup keeper did look a little bit shaky with some of his saves that he didn't keep very close to his body, and was very fortunate to get rebounds also cleared or saved or grabbed right before someone would put it, an attacker from Rayo would put it in the net. So I think Porto are in great shape here. They're probably ecstatic with the Barcelona loss last time out to Shakhtar Donetsk, both on 9 points, with Shakhtar looking behind on 6. And that match will be played, Shakhtar Donetsk against Antwerp. So they'll know it could be a 3-way tie on 9 points with Barcelona and Porto both playing that last, I guess, that last matchup for Group H of this Matchday 5 to really take someone might be equal on points with Shakhtar Donetsk at that point, and once that match wraps up. So that'll be wild. A lot of drama there. I think Porto are going to go in and try to defend like crazy and try to get some counterattacking goals. And I think Barcelona are naive enough to think they're the best club in the world, biggest club in the world. So I'm sure they say in all their anthems. And I gotta say it's a really great spot, I think, for Porto to catch a Barcelona side that will always be overpriced, overvalued, and I don't want to lose that one. So I'm very interested in Porto +1. I also think a 1-0 Barcelona win might be one of those things they grind out, hold on for dear life late. So that's of interest to me. Under 2 3/4 there. Potentially you could play win both your bets, win one of your bets. Goalless wouldn't be impossible either, I don't think. So put me on the list for Porto +1 and under 2 3/4. Last but not least, for Tuesday, I'll pick an ultimate best bet, and then we'll get ready for Wednesday. Go to Young Boys I guess they're hosting, on that artificial turf against Crvena Zvezda or Red Star Belgrade, depending on if you want to call the clubs by their English names or actually what they call themselves. I try to go with what they call themselves, but who knows what it looks like at your sportsbook. Young Boys currently a quarter goal favorite with all the juice. Over under is 3, juiced pretty heavily to under. Young Boys have neither of these teams have looked very good in this competition. Both are on 1 point right now, so this is a big battle for that Europa League spot. I think Young Boys were, if I remember correctly, were on the road at Crvena Zvezda in Serbia, and Crvena Zvezda came back from behind to draw the match late. I would imagine that gives me some confidence in Young Boys, though they are favored, so there's not a lot for me to do there. And it looks like that is more likely to go to a half of a goal than stay at a quarter. Price hasn't moved too much. It's really kind of jockeyed between Red Star Belgrade being even money and up to +104 I saw earlier, but now back to even money, so that hasn't moved too much. Total has a little bit though. We've gotten from 2 3/4 juice very heavily to over. That's now went to 3, and looks like the over continues to get bet. It could be a shootout, 2 teams trying to play, because a win will almost, they're going to play against really big sides the next round, might be fighting for Man City and Leipzig. I guess they're going to be big underdogs, certainly, in their last match. So the Crvena Zvezda will be at home, so that's helpful. So it probably means more to Young Boys, and they look better in that first matchup. I'd probably lean that way. Though Crvena Zvezda probably know if they go in and get a point, then it probably comes down to goal differential, which unfortunately, or because there'll be 2 draws head to head, and Crvena Zvezda are 2 goals ahead in goal differential. So there's a lot of money on the line getting into Europa League as opposed to crashing out and having nothing. So I think this matters. And I think Crvena Zvezda see a road draw as something that's valuable to them. So I don't know that I like Crvena Zvezda staying close, and I don't really know necessarily if they go all out if they're losing late, because this is a big decider because they're probably very unlikely to win their last matchup. So maybe they do play a little bit more aggressively, but I do like that push on 3 goals. So I'll make that. I got to put that on my list as an interest for Tuesday. So I'll go Crvena Zvezda. It's hard to take notes with it because I don't even know how to spell Crvena, Crvena. I'll go under 3 with that one as an interest there. So for my ultimate best bet, we're going to come through, do Wednesday as well, but Tuesday's ultimate best bet, I'm going to go with that Borussia Dortmund under 2.5 goals. I really like the side 2 there. I think more I think about it, but I just don't think Milan are capable of scoring a lot of goals. Maybe they get some guys back from injury, But seeing Giroud, like maybe was sent off in his previous matchup. Maybe that's why he didn't play. I don't know. There's a lot for Milan that I don't trust in their offense. And Dortmund have really somehow have played great defense so far the Champions League season. And I guess that's unexpected, but why would we expect it to stop considering it's been going this whole time? So for my best bet for Tuesday, we'll come back, compare that with the best bet for Wednesday. I'll go Borussia Dortmund under 2.5 goals on the road at Milan. So thank you if you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. For listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, leave a 5-star review. It's huge for the search rankings. Any sort of questions or things you want me to cover, I'll do whatever. I'll read whatever you put in the comments. I'll speak to, I'll answer questions if you want personal stuff, whatever. I'm an open book. Throw something in those comments. It'd be huge for us to get up the search rankings, especially as I'm doing the Betting the Pitch podcast network now with an NFL podcast with Andrew Schnicker coming out. We didn't get last week's done because he got super sick, unfortunately. We'll try to get one. We've missed a few so far this season. That's been disappointing, especially coming off a 2-0 in our best bets the week before, but we'll try to get back out there at a good NFL weekend. So trying to keep that going. And of course, Need for Seeds college basketball podcast on the Betting Pitch podcast network with my good friend, Big East Ben. That'll be recorded late Wednesday night, as I think he's left coasting this week, but ultimately that'll be out, and we will be probably no Maui theme because that tournament's not happening for another year, but I'm glad that people like that, and we'll see if we can wear sunglasses and Hawaiian shirts or something like that the rest of our podcast recordings. So let's move to Wednesday. We'll start in the early matchup. We'll start with Galatasaray hosting Manchester United, currently a pick'em with more of the juice on Manchester United. Over under is 3, and it is juiced a little bit to under. It's amazing how the mighty have fallen. But I'm sure everyone who does not like Manchester United are really, really sad and broken up about this. This is Group A. Bayern Munich on 12 points, Copenhagen on 4, Galatasaray on 4, and Manchester United sitting bottom on 3 points. Pretty incredible, but they do get Galatasaray here. Unfortunately, they got to face Bayern in their last matchup. So yikes. Though Bayern will have clinched everything because they cannot be caught. They've already won the groups. That does help Manchester United. It's amazing if that's going to be the technicality that really gets them playing a really weakened Bayern side that have a lot to focus on in the Bundesliga for the first time in what feels like over a decade. So price hasn't moved too much, maybe a little bit of money coming in on Manchester United on the road at Pick'em, probably because a draw will get your money back. And Manchester United, this is a big match for them. They got to get a win here. If they do, it probably puts them in good position to get through, though it certainly has not been easy. It's been a really bad season for Manchester United. Amazing how quickly things look like they were ending the season pretty well last year, and then they've absolutely fallen off a cliff. It might be Erik ten Hag, who was partly responsible for that as the manager guy in charge. Now, Galatasaray, my kind of read with them, Turkish sides, they usually have a lot of older, good players, big names from across Europe. But they've not really delivered in European competitions for a while now. Besiktas, Istanbul, Başakşehir, probably not as big names as Galatasaray and this club do have. But ultimately, I'm not necessarily a believer in Galatasaray. I thought they might challenge for that to advance number coming into the Champions League. But then I think I kind of was like, well, they're facing Manchester United, and I've always had big questions about the Turkish defenses. Well, they've been good enough so far and are in good position at the moment. But this is a big matchup, and this is probably going to decide whether Galatasaray can go through. If they get a win here, that'd be huge, because then they get to close with FC Copenhagen, who are somehow in second. Regardless, I don't see where goals come from in this matchup. Manchester United don't really have a lot of goal scoring. Marcus Rashford, I believe, is suspended from his red card in the last matchup against Copenhagen, and that really swung everything. Manchester United don't have a great defense, but Galatasaray's older big names aren't probably as likely to threaten as much. Dries Mertens way off his the top of his game. You can say that about a lot of the Galatasaray players, but there are a lot of players you probably know. Lucas Torreira's there. It starts with an I. He used to play for PSG, is also there. Striker Icardi, I believe. So big names, and they won't be. It should be a huge crowd environment, and I think my biggest concern is if Galatasaray take a lead, then I guess it probably doesn't hurt under if they do, because they'll probably be defending like crazy, and we'll try to do that for however long it takes whenever they take that lead. The other side, when Manchester United take a lead, the Galatasaray are probably throwing everything at the wind to try to go get an equalizer and then go win that match. They know the writing's on the wall here. If they can get a win here or just a result, that's a big step for them to even stay in the Europa League, which I think coming into the competition, if you'd given them the Europa League, finished third place, they probably would have been disappointed, but taken it, accepted it, because Manchester United and Bayern München are two of the biggest clubs in the world. Now, I think under 3 is still of interest. I don't have a lot to do with this pick'em right now. I am certainly interested and probably grow more interested the more I think about how much Manchester United have struggled so far. That if Galatasaray can move to a pick'em, getting money, getting odds, or ideally a quarter goal underdog, that would be huge. Don't have it yet, but I'll put under 3 as a potential on my list. Next, we'll move to Sevilla hosting PSV Eindhoven. Another chance for me to shout out the Dutch crowds, but this is unfortunately going to be in Andalusia in southern Spain. So will not, besides the traveling fans, which there will probably not be a huge impact from that, unfortunately, at least in my experience in Sevilla, though I did go and they're facing the bottom side, Levante. So maybe that's not a great point of reference for me. Anywho, our price right now, I guess I'll go to the group. Arsenal lead on 9 points, PSV second on 5, Lens on 5, and Sevilla last on 2 points. And didn't really look like they're going for it too much on the road at Arsenal. Their last matchup, Sevilla have basically completely dried up their offense. I think it's helped because they've traded some of their offense in order to protect their defense. But it hasn't gone well as they're sitting bottom of the table, 3 points behind both second and third place. They want to get into Europa League because that's where they shine. I am not a believer though in Sevilla, and I've been trying to bet against them / their unders most of the season, and I think it's gone fairly well. But they ultimately are still getting name value for winning the Europa League last year, despite being on their third manager, and it looks like he might not be long for this role either. But anyway, so in terms of where the price has gone, Sevilla had opened or I guess PSV had opened even money at Pick'em. They've gotten bet a little bit. It's about splitting. It's minus 112, minus 108. So it's about even in terms of the juice right now. So that's pretty tough on Sevilla. I think it's not really respectful of them. They'll have a big crowd behind them, good songs, all that sort of stuff. Crowd is pretty feisty. Though Eindhoven certainly are going to be used to that with the Dutch crowds they play against. I think this is a great spot for Eindhoven to get a good result here. I think a draw would be probably an acceptable outcome for Eindhoven. I think I like under 2 3/4 more than anything. I feel like over has been getting bet since I've been tracking it, so that's good, and numbers higher than I made it. Pretty much Sevilla are getting priced like they still have a competent offense, and I don't believe they do. So that's pretty easy for me to put that on the list. I don't think Eindhoven are going to get to a spot where I want to play them again. They might, but I think I probably want a quarter of a goal on the road team against a pretty tough crowd, far away from home in the bottom of, I think, the southernmost and warmest city in all of Europe. Maybe that'll be a nice vacation, but I doubt it'll be considered that. So, but I do like a under 2 3/4. Doesn't look like we'll get 3. That would be a much better number for me. Moving next to Bayern München hosting FC Copenhagen, and some surprise 1 and 2 in Group A. We already talked about Galatasaray and Manchester United quite a bit. But Bayern here on 12 points. They've already clinched. With 2 matches to go. But they seem to still play their best players. They also played Köln on Friday, struggled with them, didn't make a single substitution, which makes me think they're going to rotate quite a bit for this Champions League matchup, but we'll see. You never know. Total is 3.5, a little bit juiced under. Side is 2. And if I'm not mistaken, this number's come down a little bit. I guess actually hasn't moved really at all. I was expecting above 2. I guess that's what I'm confused about, but number still 2, open 2, hasn't moved juice wise. Under's gotten, I guess over's gotten bet a little bit, but I think there's a really big risk that Bayern München are playing their reserves here. Problem is they don't have a very deep squad right now, so they probably can't do that, though their reserves are certainly better, and at home they're going to score a ton of goals, most likely. Against a side that's going to go in and try to defend. And if Copenhagen go in there and get a point, it'd be so huge for them to move forward, even just to get Europa League, because I think Galatasaray and Manchester United could be a point themselves. And then Copenhagen have Galatasaray, I think, at home in that last matchup, and that would be huge for them. So they're going to go in, they're going to batten down the hatches and try their best to escape with a goalless draw. I guess that makes me like under 3.5, though it's about what I made it. So there's not a lot of value there. And I feel like that number will plummet if Bayern Munich aren't starting Harry Kane, for example, though he plays so many matches and never seems to rest. So I don't know necessarily if that he'll be missing there. Probably not something I'm going to think about wanting to play on my ultimate best bet, though. So I'll move on to Arsenal and Lens. Lens, the French, really good second place team from last season that have gone through some major surgeries, losing some of their best players, but brought in a lot of young talent. They've been working on getting better. Arsenal, 1.5 goal favorite at home. Looks like that has juices flipped basically. So it seems like Lens have been getting bet. Arsenal struggled with Brentford this weekend, got a late winner from Kai Havertz of all players. In a match where their defense wasn't really troubled, though their goalkeeper looked awful, and it looks like David Raya is confirmed that he will be the number one in Premier League play and also in Champions League. So see you later, Ramsdale. Good luck with your move, wherever it's going to happen, maybe in January. In terms of the side, it looks like Jesus flipped basically, but really hasn't moved too much, just 10 cents at 1.5. Total is 2 3/4, juice all the way to over. Looks like that's actually dropped from what was a total at 3. I imagine we probably get back there, though I don't think most books want to put out a 3 because there's a good push value or option or maybe likelihood even. What I think is most interesting in this matchup. So when you talk about the group, Lens and PSV both on 5 points and Sevilla on 2. That's, I think, catching Arsenal is going to be hard, especially Lens going on the road, knowing that this is the toughest match in their group. It's a big question, but ultimately, I think Lens, they've been really mature and pragmatic this season. They were so aggressive and really just, they don't care who they're playing in Liga. They're going after them and trying to win matches 3-1 or 3-2. I think they've had to be more pragmatic. Their managers kind of said that. And I think it's also the changes made in their club and their roster, I think, has helped to force that action as well. From, I guess, a betting perspective, this is a betting podcast, Betting the Pitch is the name, for God's sake. I'm looking at the road team as, I guess, is probably not a surprise to anyone, big favorite in Champions League, who does have some revenge in their minds after losing to Lens in their previous matchup on the road, though it was a great performance, probably one of the biggest nights in Lens club history. Arsenal have a home match with Wolves this weekend, so it's not as big of a concern. I was hoping it'd be one of their threatened or one of the sides that threatened them big time. Like, it'd be really nice if they had Man City to look ahead to, but unfortunately don't have that luxury. But ultimately, Arsenal haven't looked great offensively against low blocks. I expect Lens to be pragmatic again. They're trying to probably boss possession, but I think they'll learn that they won't be able to. Arsenal will be all over them. And I'm also interested to see what Arsenal play in terms of their formation, if they are playing a little bit more defensively with more defenders on, or if they're going to go and play all attackers like they did at Brentford with Odegaard starting, plus their front line of 3 and Trossard as well. I mean, Arsenal are basically doing everything they can to start 8 attackers. It feels like a goalkeeper and maybe 2 defenders. So we'll see what that looks like. We'll see how Arteta respects this competition and his competition in the team across the way from him. I feel like there's a good chance that English Premier League, tough Arsenal, London's biggest club, blah, 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 would potentially overlook alongside. It doesn't help that they lost on the road in Northern France, but I got to say, that's the side I want. 1.5 is bigger than I made it. Total is at 3. I think I like that a lot too. So I'm going to put that on my list, especially, I mean, I did bet Brentford this weekend +1, took a push that I felt like a winner the whole way. But that's what happens when you get a 1-goal underdog, is that it's big price in soccer. And unfortunately, they got to make it get through the 89th minute, 90th minute, and then however many 10 minutes of stoppage time is what I'm basically preparing myself for. But I'm going to wait and see if this Lens line gets back to 3. Don't have that yet. So I'll just put Lens +1.5 on my list. It's a potential for the ultimate best bet, which, stay tuned, that's coming soon. I know I'm going longer than usual on these, but I feel like it's worth it. And we've got some permutations that are a little bit easier to figure out, so it's worth it. Next, we go to Group C. First time talking about this. Real Madrid on 12 points, Napoli on 7, Braga on 3, and Union Berlin on 1. They finally ended their losing streak in the Bundesliga, but it was not pretty and took a late goal and penalty saved. Just everything's going wrong. And honestly, they sacked or got rid of the best men to keep Union Berlin in the job. I guess I didn't mean to say best men, but it's also funny because they have a woman on the staff now who, I mean, I guess is an interim assistant or associate head coach you call in college basketball or whatever, lead assistant. I don't know. Union are a team I want to be against as much as possible. They are here an underdog on the road at Sporting Braga. Braga, a quarter goal favorite at home with all the juice. Over under is 2 3/4, and it is juiced to the under. From a movement standpoint, as I pull this up, looks like Sporting Braga have been getting bet. Not surprised, probably pretty underwhelmed by a performance by Union this weekend, having to come from behind against Football Club Augsburg, who are always fighting relegation in the Bundesliga, always staying up, but always fighting it. Over under at 2 3/4 has been getting bet to the over a little bit. I am hoping that will hit 3 because I don't see a lot of goals. Sporting Braga's defense has been disappointing to me in this competition so far. But it's not enough for me to keep away from an Union Berlin side. They're going to, I think, still play the Wolfsfish away and try to defend this whole time. They are in a position where they need to, I mean, if they get a draw here, then they'll still be 2 points behind Braga going that last match day, which I think they'll be at home for Real Madrid. If there's ever a time they're going to push for a victory, it's probably here, but that hasn't been the DNA of the club in 5 years or so. It'd be very awkward if they started to do that. I think the lineup will tell a little bit of a story if they're all of a sudden throwing a lot of attackers on. That will concern me and make me feel less interested in under, but I don't even know if that'll be enough to keep me off, honestly. So I'll put that under 2 3/4 goals on my list because I still need 4 goals to take my full unit. 3 goals in Union Berlin match seems unlikely, especially Sporting Braga, who I think are going to try to do their best to hold on because they're 4 points behind Napoli. I think they know with Napoli in the next round. I guess a win would be huge that they could potentially see themselves through, but I think La Liga Portugal's club is going to be trying their best to stay in a Champions League or more so a Europa League competition for the money that flows in. And they've got a pretty good advantage, 2 points ahead of Union Berlin right now. And I don't know that a draw would be acceptable to that or what they're looking for. Of course not, they want to win at home, but I think a draw would be acceptable because then they're in pretty good shape where Union would have to beat Napoli and Braga. If they even got a draw, they might be able to still get through on that third place type of position. So I guess I like under 2 3/4, but there's probably a fair amount of drive to win that match for both of those clubs. Next, still in the same group, Real Madrid hosts Napoli, currently Real Madrid a half a goal favorite at home with almost all the juice. Over under 2 3/4 with almost all the juice. This has, in terms of movement, is gone from Napoli a 3/4 goal underdog with all the juice down to that half of a goal. So that's some backing of Napoli. Maybe really excited over this relegation fighter, former Napoli manager who's been reinstalled. I know no one liked Rudy Garcia. I literally went to a Napoli match and everyone I spoke to that spoke any sort of English, because I don't speak Italian, said that the manager was the problem. Finally got rid of him, got a win at Atalanta, though it was really thanks to a huge mistake by the Atalanta backup goalkeeper. Real Madrid on the other side just haven't been impressed by their offense whatsoever. Jude Bellingham has been incredible, but they've had nothing else really. I think Jose Lu is their answer to start at striker. They need to have one up there rather than playing the Vinny Jr. Rodrigo competition to see who can miss the net more. They certainly have a ton of talent, of course, and I'm not going to undersell that. But it does feel like they're underpriced here at only giving half of a goal at home at the Santiago Bernabeu. In terms of what they have to go for in this one, I mean, they can't be caught by Braga because they've won all 4 of their matches. Braga at best can get 9 points. Real Madrid are on 12. So draw is enough for them to get through and claim first place. But I think they're too proud for that. And I think there's some value in playing a good side that wants to win. In terms of the total, 2 3/4, it has been getting bet over, which I guess we shouldn't be expected. It seems like that's what's happening in all of these prices, I guess, besides that Union Berlin or that Lens match against Arsenal, though it's very juiced. It might come back to 3. I think this is an under interest for me, especially I'm hoping that it hits 3. I just don't believe in Napoli's offense. really, it's nothing like it was. They did have Osimhen come back and play as a substitute, if I'm not mistaken, on the road at Atalanta this weekend. That was huge for them, but he didn't really do a ton. I guess he did set up the game winner after a big goalkeeping mistake. But I think my interest here is under 2 3/4. I'm going to be waiting and hoping that we get a 3 before this kicks off. But I don't like Napoli on the road, which does limit my interest, I guess. But I've backed a lot of really lower level La Liga teams on the road at Real Madrid, Santiago Bernabeu, going in there to try to defend. I think Napoli will probably have that in mind, knowing that if they get a point, they're in really good shape to have their destiny in their own hands against Braga, who would have to then likely beat them if they're able to get a point at Napoli. So that'd be tough. Next, go to Benfica hosting Inter Milan. This is one of the weirder lines that I've seen in terms of where this Group D is set up. I haven't talked about this one yet, but we get the next 2 matches, thankfully. So hopefully that's easier to remember and a little bit more entertaining. Real Sociedad on 10 points, Inter on 10, Salzburg on 3, Benfica on 0. Real Sociedad were picked to finish 3rd. I picked them and put them as a 2 advance number. I wish I'd kind of put some money on them to win the group, but I just took the plus money on them to advance, and that has been accomplished. So maybe that explains why Inter are a pick'em right now on the road at Benfica. Benfica were supposed to finish 2nd, but have been a disaster in this competition. 1 goal for, 7 allowed, -6 right now, 4 losses. Including an opening round loss to Salzburg. We're supposed to finish bottom of the group. I think an early red card was a big reason for that, but it's been disastrous. I want to say Benfica sacked their manager, Roger Schmidt. I want to say Benfica manager. Let's see. I think I guess Roger Schmidt's still there. Okay, well, great. Guess we can keep fading him until they fire him. But Benfica somehow are a pick-em to Inter Milan, who are incredibly, the most talented and best, most consistent side in Serie A in Italy. Though Italy's certainly not at its peak like it has been in the past. It's pretty incredible. I was expecting them to be a favorite for sure. But pick 'em, and it seems like Benfica have taken on some more money since I've been tracking this as well. So this is banana land. I'm very interested in Inter at pick 'em. I will not likely put it, and I'm going to have to think a lot more about it to make it a bet of mine, but won't be selected for my best bet. But I'm shocked. Also, the total at 2.5 seems pretty low. Unless Inter, who generally don't sit players in Champions League, I feel like not many players are of starting 11s are sat in Champions League matchups. There's got to be a lot of rotation here for this line to make sense. So I'm very interested in Inter, and we'll see what happens with this setup. And last but not least, we have Real Sociedad hosting Red Bull Salzburg. And Sociedad, a 1-goal favorite with almost all the juice right now. Over under is 2 3/4, almost all the way juiced under. That total hasn't moved. The side has gotten bet a little bit on the Salzburg side, probably eating up the even money at +1. With some good potential. I think Sociedad are much more likely to rotate because they have a much bigger fight on their hands with La Liga. Salzburg were pretty competitive. The match I went to at 10-0 against Inter Milan, I thought controlled a lot of the match, then went a goal behind, ended up equalizing and then giving up a penalty late to lose. I was pretty impressed there. I imagine they can hang with Sociedad. Sociedad, I think, are notorious for having a dominant effort, but not really scoring enough goals to reflect that. So this is a big match for Salzburg. If they get a point and Benfica lose at home to Inter, then they have clinched the Europa League spot, berth, whatever, for 3rd place in this group. They can't get Champions League. So, a win would clinch it as well, but I'm not sure that they're going to go all out for that on the road, though. Salzburg have been a very aggressive attacking side for years and years, and it got them to the knockouts, I think last year even, where they went out to Bayern Munich, if I remember correctly. So I am interested in the +1. I'd love to see it get to a 1 1/4, but that probably means Real Sociedad are playing their best players. I don't know necessarily if that's a likely scenario. I'm going to have to read the tea leaves and ultimately see the lineups for that. And if you get a +1 and Sociedad are playing some youth team, which is unlikely, but because they probably still want to win the group, that puts them in a much better position to face a 2nd place runner-up as opposed to facing a group champion. That's a big, I think, dilemma between 1st and 2nd. But that's why I think Inter are going to play their best player. So pick'em is ludicrous to me, even with Benfica at home in a huge stadium that probably will pack it out as they're trying to fight for the Europa League spot. I think the what is it? Not ethics, the spirit, whatever it would be called in Lisbon is not great for Benfica. So, but I'll skip that one as we just talked about that matchup, and I still like Inter getting at a pick 'em. But Salzburg, this is a good spot for them to potentially catch Real Sociedad, already knowing they've gone through, maybe having an eye on La Liga more so than this competition. They're pretty good at rotating, though. Emmanuel Alguacil is awesome. And hopefully stays around at Real Sociedad for a long, long time because he's been very profitable to me. But I guess I like the Salzburg side getting that one goal of insurance. And I guess I like under 2 3/4 a little bit as well. It's probably bigger than I made the total. It is slightly. And I think there's a good possibility Real Sociedad play a decent side and win 1-0 here. Are excited with that, want 3 points. And if Inter are really struggling with Benfica, then that might be the perfect scenario for them. So for my ultimate best bet, it's not as cut and dry this time, I don't think, for this I guess Wednesday setup of Champions League matches. A lot can go a lot of different ways, of course. But I think I'm going to go with Union Berlin under 2 3/4 goals. I just feel like that is a team that's not. I can't imagine that Cheetah is changing their spots and all of a sudden going to play an attacking lineup and try to win 3-2. I just think they're going to try to win. They're going to try to defend on the road. They're going to try to make it really hard on a weaker side, though you could argue that Union Berlin are the weakest team in this competition right now, especially with their form and how they, I think, are sitting bottom of the Bundesliga, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Köln are there, but they're close. They're certainly in the relegation areas, haven't won in forever. So that's probably my bigger interest on Wednesday. So we've now made it to the ultimate best bet portion of the show. Thank you if you've been tuning in this long. Who knows how long it's been? It's probably been hours, years, whatever. I know a lot of you like the shorter clips, so hope I will keep those going. As I know that some of you don't have the long attention span. We're almost at an hour, so that's pretty good. That's basically like a weekend 5 leagues as opposed to I guess it's 16 matches. So we've gone in depth. We went through the permutations, hopefully. Any questions, feel free to slide in my DMs, @the_real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, or Patreon. If you're not a member of my Patreon yet, become a patron. It's worth it, especially if you're subscribe to me on other sites. It is a very good deal. Would check that out, patreon.com. That's @the_real_G Warner. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe for an Apple Podcast or on Spotify, leave a 5-star review. Don't worry, the ultimate best bet's coming. Just getting through the last things before we get there, because I got to cut this up, get my phone ready to record. If you're not a member of BetOnline, go check out 50% match on your first time deposit if you use my referral link. Also, better deal if you're not a member yet at sportsbetting.ag. They will double your bonus, so you will be able to use extra outs with both of those casinos. Plus, you get free money from them, which is ultimately something you will not get from casinos in Vegas. You might get some bet refunds from the various legal operators, legal with an L, in the United States, but usually you got to put a bunch of money in, you got to lose for them to give it back to you. Here, their money that's given to you right as you deposit. So check that out, sportsbetting.ag for double your money. And then BetOnline will give you half. So still a good number and something that won't be matched at most places. So check both those out. Both those links are below in the descriptions, whether you're watching on YouTube, on Apple or Spotify, should all be there in the comments. So it's time for the ultimate best bet. So let's get into it. This is the @real_G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch Champions League edition. We're going through the ultimate best bet portion of the show, Tuesday and Wednesday. From Tuesday, I like the Borussia Dortmund under 2.5 goals. And from Wednesday, I like Union Berlin under 2 3/4 goals. So not a lot of goals expected in these German games. And I think for my best bet, I usually go Wednesdays. I feel a little bit more comfortable and more time to analyze. But honestly, I really love Dortmund under 2.5 goals on the road at AC Milan. There's not a lot of expectations for me on Dortmund offensively, really, which is a big surprise. And their defense has been their big problem, plagued them for years. But they've been a lot more efficient, effective with keeping teams out than scoring goals. They're at top of their group in the group of death in the Champions League right now. And this is a big matchup for them. I think my perspective on Milan, also they're at home, which helps, but they are very injured, are missing a ton of players. And this was a goalless draw on the road at Dortmund, the first matchup. So I don't see a lot of goals here. I don't see 3 of them. Play under 2.5 in Dortmund visiting Milan. And And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch, Champions League edition. Thank you for tuning in, especially if you're here now. You've been through an hour, probably 58 minutes or so. I'm going to go chop this up, get this uploaded. Hopefully you all can listen to it on in the wee hours of Monday night, early hours Tuesday. And then as I get my bedtime reminder, which I'm not going to make, I will talk to you all very, very soon.